Have you ever woken up in the dead of night, your mind a whirlwind of what-ifs and should-haves, replaying every awkward conversation from the day, like a broken record on an old vinyl player, the needle skipping endlessly over the grooves of regret? Or stood in the middle of a crowded room, surrounded by the warm glow of laughter and the lively chatter of voices, blending like a symphony, yet felt utterly alone, trapped in a storm of doubts about your choices, your path, your very worth, those invisible chains tightening around your chest until breathing feels like a luxury? What if that endless inner chatter, the one that steals your sleep with its relentless hum, dims your joy like a bulb flickering in a drafty room, and keeps you chasing a peace that always seems just out of reach, shimmering like a mirage on a hot summer road, wasn't the truth of who you are, but simply a habit you could learn to watch, like clouds drifting lazily across a vast, endless sky, their shapes forming and dissolving without ever touching the ground below? Imagine the freedom in that shift, the quiet exhale as you step back from the edge of the whirlwind, observing it swirl without being swept away. Picture this. It's one of those drizzly Seattle afternoons where the rain doesn't pour in angry sheets but hangs in the air like a soft, gauzy veil, turning the bustling streets into shimmering mirrors of blurred neon lights and the hazy silhouettes of passers-by huddled under umbrellas. You're rushing from one obligation to the next, your boots splashing through shallow puddles that reflect the overcast sky, heart pounding, not from the steep hill you're climbing with its slick cobblestones and the faint scent of wet pine from nearby evergreens, but from the invisible weight of unspoken fears pressing down like an uninvited backpack stuffed with tomorrow's worries. Does that sound familiar? That frantic rhythm of feet on pavement matching the erratic beat in your chest? Does it make you wonder if life has to feel like this, always one step behind your own happiness, forever playing catch-up in a game where the finish line keeps receding? Stay with me, friend. Let the drizzle patter softly on your imaginary window as we lean in closer. Because what if I told you there's a quiet power within you, waiting to be uncovered like a hidden gem in the misty folds of the Cascade foothills, that can turn that inner noise into a gentle, soothing hum, like the distant call of a foghorn on the sound, and that restless search into a steady, warm glow, enveloping you like the first sip of hot cider on a chill evening? Let's meet Doris. She's 34, born and raised in the misty embrace of the Pacific Northwest, the kind of woman who grew up dreaming of the rich, earthy scent of fresh brewed coffee mingling with the salty, briny tang of Puget Sound carried on the wind from the waterfront docks. Doris works as a project coordinator at a sleek tech firm downtown, her days swallowed by endless spreadsheets glowing on her dual monitors, back-to-back Zoom calls where faces flicker like ghosts in pixelated boxes, and the relentless hum of fluorescent lights overhead that never quite matches the soft, diffused natural light she craves, filtering through the tall pines outside her childhood home. Her mornings start with the metallic screech of the light rail pulling into Pioneer Square Station, her body jostled among a sea of commuters, clutching insulated reusable mugs steaming with their morning rituals, all of them wearing that same polite, weary mask of "I've got this," etched into furrowed brows and half-smiles. But inside, beneath the layers of wool coats and forced composure, Doris doesn't have it at all. Her thoughts tangle like the overhead wires sparking in the rain, pulling her in a dozen directions at once. It started small, this feeling of being stuck, like a boat caught in the slack tide, drifting without anchor. Back in college at the University of Washington, amid the brick pathways lined with blooming cherry blossoms in spring and the crisp rustle of fallen leaves in autumn, she majored in business, her notebooks filled with vivid sketches and notes picturing herself opening a little cafe. Someday envision the scene. Exposed brick walls warmed by the golden flicker of pendant lights, mismatched wooden chairs, gathered around scarred tables where patrons sink into plush cushions, the irresistible aroma of cinnamon scones baking in the oven wafting out to draw in locals on those foggy mornings when the world feels wrapped in a soft gray blanket. A place where people could linger over steaming mugs, share whispered stories across the counter, and truly feel seen, their hurried lives pausing for a moment of genuine connection. But life, with its unpredictable currents, had other plans. A recession hit like a sudden squall, jobs vanishing as quickly as summer sunbreaks, and she took the steady gig at Evergreen, tech just to pay off those mounting student loans, the interest accruing like dew on a fern frond. Now, 5 years deep into the grind, her desk is a chaotic altar piled high with dog-eared reports on app integrations she barely understands, lines of code blurring into meaningless symbols, and her once vibrant dream feels like a faded postcard tucked away in a forgotten drawer, its colors muted by time and neglect. Doris's evenings dissolve into a monotonous blur of takeout from the vibrant food, trucks parked along First Avenue, where the air thickens with the sizzle of grilling skewers and the spicy kick of street tacos wrapped in foil that warms her hands against the evening chill, followed by Netflix binges on her sagging couch that leave her more hollow than entertained, the screen's blue glow casting long shadows across her dimly lit living room cluttered with half-read magazines and empty mugs. Her sister Alex lives just across the shimmering expanse of the 520 bridge in the polished suburbs of Bellevue, married with 2 rambunctious kids whose laughter echoes through video, calls like distant thunder, embodying the picture of settled life with its minivan routines and weekend soccer fields. Every Sunday call, conducted over the hum of Alex's kitchen fan and the clatter of dishes in the sink, ends with her cheerful probing. So, when are you joining the family chaos? A question laced with love but landing, like a gentle nudge to Doris's solar plexus, and Doris forces a laugh that rings hollow in her ears, while her chest tightens like a fist around an unspoken ache. At work, her boss, Mr. Hargrove, a stern man in his late 50s with a perpetual coffee stain, blooming like a Rorschach blot on his rumpled tie and a voice gravelly from too many late nights, piles on deadlines with a gruff make it happen. Doris, his words dropping like stones into still water, sending ripples of pressure through her day. And then there's her colleague Riley, the sharp-witted graphic designer with intricate tattoos of swirling vines and geometric patterns peeking from the cuffs of her rolled-up sleeves, who always seems one step ahead, landing promotions with effortless charisma, jetting off to glossy conferences in sun-drenched cities, her Instagram feed a curated montage of rooftop brunches under azure skies, blinking glasses filled with vibrant mimosa hues, and bold career moves announced with triumphant captions. Doris admires her from afar, envies the ease in her stride, and in the quiet moments between tasks, compares herself relentlessly, the gap widening like the yawning mouth of Elliott Bay at low tide. Then there's Taylor, her old college roommate from those late-night cram sessions in the U dorms, now a free-spirited barista/blogger, thriving in the eclectic vibe of Capitol Hill, whose texts buzz in like fireflies on Doris's phone screen with playful urgency. Girl, life's too short for bad lattes come. Dream with me over a flat white and some wild ideas. But Doris brushes them off with quick excuses, her thumbs hovering too exhausted to admit how far she's drifted from that original cafe vision, the words sticking in her throat like dry toast. Deep down, the overthinking gnaws at her relentlessly, a persistent itch she can't scratch. What if I quit and fail spectacularly? My savings evaporating like morning mist? What if I'm too old at 34 to start over? My best ideas gathering dust like forgotten recipes in a binder? Why can't I just be content like everyone else seems to be, scrolling through their feeds with smiles that reach their eyes? It builds like the relentless drizzle outside her apartment window on those long winter evenings, subtle at first, a few errant drops tapping against the glass, then soaking through every layer of her resolve until she's chilled to the bone, shivering not from the cold, but from the bone-deep weariness of it all. Sleep evades her like a skittish cat, nights stretching into a vigil of ceiling stares and restless tosses under threadbare quilts. Mornings bring a thick fog she can't shake, clouding her vision as she fumbles for the coffee pot, the rich brew's promise of alertness falling flat. She's surviving, yes, clocking in, checking boxes, breathing through the motions, but not truly living. Not with the full-throated vitality she remembers from childhood hikes through Olympic National Park, where the air hummed with possibility and her heart beat in sync with the rustling ferns. One Saturday, with the rain easing into a rare, ethereal, misty sunbreak that paints the city in soft, diffused gold, filtering through the low-hanging clouds like light through a stained glass window, Doris wanders into the welcoming Embrace of Elliott Bay Book Company on Capitol Hill. The store envelops her immediately in its comforting aura, the musty, comforting scent of aged paper, mingling with the sharp tang of fresh ink from the printing press in the back, towering shelves groaning under the weight of stories untold, their spines a rainbow of colors beckoning like old friends. She's there for distraction, perhaps a gripping mystery novel to drown out the incessant noise in her head, something with shadowy plots and unexpected twists to mirror the chaos within. But as she drifts past the self-help section, usually one she avoids with a skeptical eye roll, dismissing it as fluffy promises peddled to the desperate, all pastel covers and vague affirmations her fingers brush against a slim volume with a cover evoking the serene hush of a calm ocean at dusk, deep blues fading to twilight purples, waves frozen in gentle repose. The Magic of Mindful Self-Awareness by Matt Tenney. Something about the title tugs at her soul, like a whisper from that long-forgotten dream carried on the breeze from the nearby market stalls. She flips it open at random, the pages crisp under her touch, and reads a single line about watching thoughts like leaves floating idly on a babbling stream, carried by the current without resistance, and feels a tiny crack forming in the armor she's built around her heart over years of quiet disappointments. On pure impulse, heart quickening with a mix of curiosity and trepidation, she buys it, tucking it into her canvas tote bag like a secret talisman, its weight a comforting promise against her side as she steps back into the street. Back home in her cozy, cluttered apartment overlooking the hum of traffic below, curled up on her worn couch with its faded floral pattern and a slight spring in the cushions, a mug of chamomile tea steaming beside her, its herbal sweetness curling into the air like a sigh she begins to read. And in those pages, illuminated by the soft glow of her reading lamp, Doris starts to uncover not just abstract ideas or bullet-point wisdom, but a detailed, compassionate map back to herself, charting paths through the fog with gentle markers of insight and practice. Welcome to Book Navigator, friends. Before we dive deeper into Doris's transformative journey and the gentle, profound wisdom that reshapes her world from the inside out, like roots quietly expanding through fertile soil, please subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so you never miss a beat. We'll bring you new summaries, heartfelt insights, and immersive stories every week fuel for your own path to clarity and that quiet, abiding joy that settles in like a well-worn sweater on a crisp autumn day. Now let's continue, settling in as the narrative unfolds like a well-loved book under a rainy window. As Doris turns the pages, the first lesson unfolds like a soft revelation at dawn, when the first light creeps over the horizon and gilds the world in tentative gold. There's no such thing as good or bad, it's all in the stories we tell ourselves about what happens next, the narratives we weave from threads of fear or hope. Matt Tenney doesn't preach this as some lofty, unattainable philosophy detached from the grit of real life. He shares it through his own raw, unflinching path from the cold, echoing bars of a prison cell, where every setback felt like a life sentence etched in unyielding steel, the clang of doors and the weight of regret pressing like an iron blanket to the silent incense-scented monasteries nestled in mist-shrouded mountains where he learned to sit with the ache of his past without letting it define the vastness of his present, breath by measured breath. For Doris, this lesson strikes home with piercing clarity during a brutal Monday morning meeting, the kind that sets the tone for a week of tension. The conference room, perched high in the glass-walled tower of evergreen tech, overlooks the ceaseless ballet of the ferry terminal below, where massive white vessels glide like elegant swans across the slate-gray waters of the Sound, gulls wheeling and crying against the brooding sky streaked with veins of pale light. Mr. Hargrove is pacing the length of the polished oak table, his polished loafers clicking sharply on the linoleum like impatient Morse code, his voice slicing through the air as he tears into the team's latest pitch with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. This is sloppy, people unacceptable in this quarter. Doris, your timelines are off again. Get it together. The words land like icy raindrops on her skin, cold and immediate, seeping through her thin blouse to chill her core. Her face burns with a flush that creeps from her neck to her ears, heart racing like a trapped bird against her ribs as the room falls into a heavy, suffocating silence broken only by the faint whir of the projector fan. Riley shifts uncomfortably in her chair, leather creaking softly, avoiding eye contact by fiddling with her stylus on the tablet. In Doris's mind, the storm brews with ferocious speed. I'm a failure, utterly incompetent. They'll fire me by Friday, blackball me from every firm in the city. I'll never escape this soul-crushing cubicle hell, condemned to spreadsheets until I'm gray and forgotten. She imagines the cafe dream crumbling further into dust, Alex's knowing sighs over family dinners heavy with unspoken disappointment, Taylor's pitying text laced with "I told you so" undertones. It's not just the criticism stinging like salt in a fresh cut. It's the flood of what-ifs that follows, a deluge turning a tough feedback session into a full-blown catastrophe, drowning her in visions of eviction notices and empty bank accounts. But that evening, after the fluorescent-lit commute home on a bus, rumbling through puddles and exhaust fumes, book in hand like a lifeline, Doris pauses in the quiet sanctuary of her apartment, the city's distant hum muffled by drawn curtains. Tenney's words echo in her mind like a calming mantra. Events are neutral, like blank canvases. Our thoughts paint them with vivid, often misleading colors, strokes of drama, fear, or triumph that may not match reality at all. What if she watched those spiraling fears like passing cars on I-5 during rush hour, headlights streaking through the rain-smeared windows, there one moment and gone the next, but not hers to chase or crash into? The idea plants a seed of possibility, fragile but insistent. The next day, back at her desk amid the familiar clutter of sticky notes and cooling coffee dregs, with her feet planted firmly on the industrial, carpet that smells faintly of chemical cleaner and stale, pretzels from the vending machine. She experiments with this new lens. She feels the solid weight of her body in the ergonomic chair, its mesh back yielding slightly to her posture, the cool, smooth metal of her keyboard under her fingertips as they hover over the keys, the subtle vibration of her laptop fan like a distant purr. It's simple, almost comically mundane, just noticing, anchoring in the tangible now instead of the turbulent maybe later. When Hargrove's email pings in another revision request, the subject line glaring like a spotlight, urgent, Q3. Adjustments, the old panic rises like bile in her throat, hot and familiar. But Doris breathes into it deliberately, and through her nose for a count of 4, out through her mouth, like fogging a mirror. This is just an email, a task on a list, not the end of my story, not the verdict on my worth. With steady hands, she responds calmly, her words measured and professional, even weaving in a proactive tweak to the workflow that streamlines the process. To her surprise, Hargrove replies with a terse, "Good catch, implemented," a rare nod that feels like sunlight breaking through. Riley notices the shift during their shared lunch break at the sterile food court downstairs, amid the greasy sizzle of stir-fry woks and the distant, mournful horn of a barge navigating the shipping channel. Overshared plates of oversalted, fries dusted with sea, salt that crunches between teeth. Riley leans in, her tattooed forearm catching the light. "Hey, you seemed different today. Less rattled, more like you're steering the ship." Doris smiles, tentative as her first bloom, her lips curving with unpracticed ease. "Just trying to see things clearer, you know? Not letting the waves knock me under." In that exchange, a quiet alliance forms, the air between them lighter, charged with unspoken support. This shift ripples outward like a stone skipped across the glassy surface of green lake on a still morning, creating ever-widening circles of change that touch everything in its path. No longer does every misstep utter misplaced decimal in a budget sheet or a delayed client response feel like irrefutable proof of her inadequacy, a scarlet letter branded on her forehead for all to see. Instead, they become mere blips, footnotes in a larger narrative she's authoring. She starts applying this newfound perspective to small joys too, savoring them with deliberate attention, the fragrant steam rising in lazy curls from her morning pour-over coffee, dark beans ground fresh, with a satisfying burr that releases notes of chocolate and berry, the rhythmic sway of the light rail as it curves through the viaduct, cradling her body like a gentle hammock strung between skyscrapers, the world outside blurring into streaks of emerald parks and silver waterways. The bad moments lose their vice-like grip, their shadows shortening under the light of awareness, and the neutral ones, those in between, stretches of routine bloom into fertile space for her, dreams to take root and stretch toward the sun. For the first time in years, emboldened by this inner spaciousness, she sketches a rough cafe layout on a crumpled napkin during a solo lunch at a bustling Capitol Hill diner, the air thick with the chatter of artists and the clatter of silverware on formica tables. Her pencil strokes are steady, unhurried, outlining a cozy corner nook with built-in bookshelves, a communal table scarred from years of shared meals, even a chalkboard wall for daily specials, scrawled in looping white cursive. As she erases and refines, the lines gaining confidence, a flicker of excitement warms her chest, chasing away the chill of doubt like steam from a fresh espresso shot. This isn't just doodling. It's reclamation, a quiet declaration that her vision endures, waiting patiently like a seed in winter soil for the thaw. Building on this foundation of reframed perception, the book invites Doris to clear her mind, not by forcing an impossible silence that echoes like an empty, auditorium, but by treating thoughts as transient visitors knocking at the door, not permanent residents claiming squatters' rights in her mental home. Tenney describes it vividly as decluttering a dusty mental attic crammed with forgotten boxes and cobweb-draped relics. You don't wage war on the dust bunnies with frantic sweeping. You simply shine a steady light into the corners, letting them be seen, acknowledged, and gently ushered out without attachment or fanfare. Overthinking, he explains with compassionate clarity, thrives in the shadowy dark, nourished by our unconscious alliance with it, our habit of nodding along, adding fuel to its fire with yes, but what if refrains. For Doris, this concept becomes vividly alive, almost tangible, during a rare girls' night out with Taylor at a cozy, dimly lit spot tucked into the artsy streets of Fremont, where fairy lights strung like constellations twinkle overhead, casting a warm, ethereal glow on exposed brick walls adorned with rotating local murals. The air hums with the low murmur of conversations and the faint clink of glasses, while craft beers fizz invitingly with bright citrus, notes lemon zest and grapefruit, peel dancing on the tongue with each sip. Taylor's animated as ever, her eyes sparkling like the condensation beads on their pint glasses, waving her hands with expressive flair as she recounts her latest blog collaboration, a whimsical pop-up coffee event in a converted warehouse that drew eager lines, snaking around the block, the morning fog lifting to reveal a crowd buzzing with anticipation, steam rising from thermoses like communal sighs of delight. You should jump in, Doris. Your ideas for that sustainable brew spot locally sourced beans, compostable cups, that whole eco-vibe. Pure gold, seriously. It'd kill on social. But as Taylor talks, her voice a melodic cascade over the bar's ambient indie playlist, Doris's mind hijacks the moment with ruthless efficiency. She's thriving because she's brave, leaping without a net. Wow, I'm just safe, boring, playing it small in a world that rewards the bold. The chatter fades into a distant roar, like waves receding from shore. Her beer grows warm and flat in her hand, the citrus edge turning bitter. She excuses herself abruptly to the bathroom, the door swinging shut behind her with a soft thud, and splashes cold water on her face from the pedestal sink. Droplets, tracing cool paths down her collarbone and pooling at the hollow of her throat, the mirror fogging slightly with her exhales. Back at the scarred wooden table, inspired by the book's practical guidance, she tries Tenney's anchor technique, returning to the body and the now, grounding like roots delving into damp earth. She feels the wooden stool's unyielding support under her thighs, its slight give worn smooth from countless patrons, the subtle stickiness of the glass in her palm from the beer's condensation, the enveloping hum of laughter around her, punctuated by the pop of a cork from the bartender's station. Thought arises. I'm falling behind, always the spectator. Okay, she whispers inwardly, noted like labeling a spice in a pantry. Next, let it drift. The spiral eases almost immediately, uncoiling like a spring released from tension, allowing her to re-engage with the evening's flow. She leans forward, asks Taylor about the nitty-gritty details, the labyrinth of permits, navigated like a bureaucratic maze, the pre-opening night, panic that twisted her stomach into knots as she double-checked every outlet and espresso tamper under the harsh fluorescence of the empty space. It was terrifying, Taylor admits, her animated energy softening into vulnerability, eyes crinkling at the corners with the memory, standing there at 5 a.m. with the fog rolling in off the canal, wondering if anyone would even show. But showing up anyway? That's the real magic, the leap that turns what if into what now. Doris, buoyed by her anchor, shares a sliver of her own rekindled dream, her voice barely rising above the bars, friendly murmur, and the sizzle of garlic fries from the kitchen pass. I've been sketching again. A spot with harbor views, maybe live music on weekends. By night's end, as the fairy lights blur into halos from their laughter, they're huddled over fresh napkin sketches, pencils flying in collaborative, frenzy outlining a pastry case with tiered displays of flaky croissants, debating the perfect playlist of chill lo-fi beats. The next week, Doris catches herself mid-overthink during a solo walk along the winding Burke-Gilman Trail, where tall evergreens arch overhead like cathedral spires, their needles whispering secrets in the breeze that carries the faint, loamy scent of earth after rain. A worry about finances bubbles up unbidden rents due next week, and cafe startup costs are insane, loans looming like storm clouds. She labels it gently without judgment, planning mode. Then returns her focus to the crunch of gravel under her sneakers, each step a rhythmic affirmation. The distant, soothing lap of Lake Washington against the shore, waves kissing pebbles with patient persistence. Clarity emerges not as an empty void of nothingness, but as expansive room to breathe, to create without the clutter of catastrophe. She even pitches a small, innovative work project to Riley during a water cooler huddle, her words tumbling out with uncharacteristic spark. Riley responds with an enthusiastic high five in the sunlit break room, the slap echoing off the vending machines stocked with candy bars and energy drinks. Doris, you're on fire lately, like you've got this secret jetpack. Clearing isn't flawless or instantaneous thoughts. Still crowd and like uninvited guests at a party, jostling for attention, but now she meets them with open curiosity, a gentle nod rather than combat gloves, her energy shifting palpably. Evenings, once endurance tests of scrolling numbness, transform into invitations to create, journaling prompts from the book by candlelight, experimenting with herbal tea blends on her tiny stove, the steam curling like possibilities into the night air. As Doris deepens into these practices, the next insight arrives like a welcome guest at her door. Take a vacation from your mind, not a literal escape to the rugged, whale-watched shores of the San Juan Islands, though Tenney nods appreciatively to how nature's raw symphony, the crash of waves on basalt cliffs, the salty spray misting your face, the cry of eagles wheeling overhead resets the soul like a factory reboot, but rather a daily portable retreat into presence, accessible in stolen moments amid the chaos. He likens the mind to a bustling airport, terminal at peak travel, season flights, thoughts, arriving and departing in a frenzy of announcements, and scurrying footsteps, gates buzzing with delayed anxieties and boarding excitements. The vacation is simply stepping outside to the observation deck, suitcase-free, to watch the spectacle unfold without the compulsion to gate-check your peace. This practice, he stresses with encouraging practicality, builds resilience without demanding extra time from your packed calendar. Weave it seamlessly into the fabric of routine brushing teeth with mindful strokes, of the brush against enamel, or waiting for the elevator's ding amid the lobby's echo of heels on marble. For Doris, this transformative tool reshapes a family dinner that's been looming on her horizon, like a storm cloud heavy with thunder, dark and inevitable. Alex has invited her to the sprawling, sun-dappled home in Bellevue for her nephew's 4th birthday bash. Envision the scene, colorful balloons bobbing like jellyfish in the living room currents, a towering cake frosted in electric blue swirls and topped with plastic dinosaurs, the joyful chaos of toddlers underfoot, their tiny feet pattering across the hardwood like rain on a tin roof, squeals piercing the air as they chase each other around the coffee table littered with wrapping paper shreds. Doris dreads it with a knot in her gut, the inevitable, well-meaning questions about her single life. over plates of barbecue ribs sticky with sauce, the relentless comparison to Alex's tidy, enviable world with its bay windows framing manicured lawns, dotted with blooming rhododendrons and the faint, comforting scent of fresh-cut grass. Driving over the iconic 520 bridge in her reliable hatchback, wipers swishing rhythmically against a sudden shower that beads like diamonds on the windshield. Her thoughts race unchecked. They'll see right through my facade, the cracks in my confidence. Why can't I have this stability, this easy rhythm of family and purpose? The bridge's cables hum past like harp strings in the wind, but inside, turmoil reigns. But at a red light on the approach ramp, the engine's idle purr vibrating through the seat, she remembers the book's gentle cue. Vacation time step off the concourse. She scans her body methodically, the seatbelt's gentle, reassuring pressure across her shoulder and chest like a hug from an old friend. The steering wheel's worn leather yielding softly under her palms, warm from her grip. The faint, evergreen scent of the pine air freshener dangling from the rear view, evoking childhood road trips. The worries hover like planes in holding patterns, engines droning, but she doesn't board their flight, doesn't scramble for a window seat in the drama. At Alex's welcoming house, the front door swings open to a wave of warmth, the rich, savory aroma of roasting chicken mingling with the sweet undercurrent of vanilla candles flickering on the mantel, their flames dancing shadows across family photos framed in silver. The kids swarm Doris immediately with unbridled enthusiasm, their sticky, chocolate-smeared hugs enveloping her legs, giggles erupting like bells from the backyard, place set where rainbow-colored slide gleams under the patio lights. When Alex pulls her aside into the bustling kitchen, her apron dusted with flour like fresh snow and hugging, her frame with practical ties, she asks softly over the chop of vegetables on a cutting board, "Sis, you okay? You seem distant lately, like you're carrying the weight of the world." The words, tender as they are, trigger the old defensiveness in Doris, rising like steam from a boiling pot. Here it comes, the pity party, the subtle judgment wrapped in concern. But she pauses, mid-reach for a glass of iced tea beating with condensation, and anchors in the moment, the warmth of the ceramic mug seeping into her palms like a promise. The lively sizzle of bell peppers and onions hitting the hot skillet, releasing a burst of earthy aroma that makes her mouth water. The rhythmic pulse of the overhead fan stirring the air. "I'm figuring things out," she says, her voice steady and clear, not wavering like a reed in the wind. Dreaming bigger, actually reviving that old cafe idea with a twist. Alex's eyes light up like the string lights twinkling in the garden beyond, crinkling with genuine delight. "Tell me everything over cake?" Over generous slices of chocolate cake, its fudgy layers yielding, under forks with a soft crumbly, sigh and crumbs scattering like festive. Confetti across the checkered tablecloth. Doris shares the napkin sketches and budding plans, her words flowing freer than they have in months. Alex listens intently, nodding with the same focus she gives to bedtime stories for the kids. "You'd be amazing at that. Remember how you'd experiment with Dad's old espresso machine in the garage? Steam everywhere, us giggling over burnt attempts? No undercurrent of judgment, just pure, sisterly connection weaving tighter. The evening stretches languidly, easy as the sunset gilding. Lake Washington in hues of peach and lavender visible through the windows. Driving home later, windows cracked to admit the cooling evening air laced with the faint bloom of night jasmine from roadside shrubs. Doris realizes with a profound quiet, the vacation didn't erase the fears or polish away the rough edges. It simply freed her to show up fully, present and whole in the messy beauty of the moment. Alex texts as she pulls into her parking spot. "Proud of you, always." Let's plot that cafe takeover brunch next weekend. A small but sturdy bridge rebuilt, one aware, intentional breath at a time, spanning the gap that doubt had carved. This evolving practice leads Doris inexorably to the heart of it all, the luminous core pulsing beneath the surface lessons. Happiness isn't a distant future state to be unlocked like a treasure chest at Journeys, and it's the ground you're already standing on, solid and unyielding, right here under your feet amid the everyday. Tenney unpacks this truth with quiet, resonant power, drawing from the timeless well of wisdom shared by monks in threadbare robes who discover profound joy not despite the humility of scrubbing worn stone floors with calloused hands and soapy water sloshing in buckets, but because of it, the meditative rhythm of brush on tile, the faint scent of lye mingling with earth, turning drudgery into devotion, chasing happiness as a shimmering destination. Once I snagged the promotion with its corner office view, a devoted partner to share sunsets with, the thriving cafe bustling with loyal patrons, keeps us in perpetual motion, eternally arriving at gates that lead only to more gates, never truly settling into the lush meadow of now. True ease, he reveals, blooms effortlessly in the present, uncovered layer by layer like sunlight piercing the thick fog rolling off the strait of Juan de Fuca, illuminating the landscape one revelation at a time. For Doris, this crystallizes in a crucible of vulnerability, the sharp sting of a rejected side hustle pitch that shatters her fragile momentum. She's poured her weekends into crafting a comprehensive business plan for her envisioned cafe, late nights hunched over her kitchen table under the warm pool of a single lamp, papers strewn like autumn leaves sourcing ethically farmed local roasts from misty Olympic Peninsula farms where beans dry on raised beds under the stars, eco-friendly cups molded from recycled ocean plastic that whisper sustainability with every pour, even settling on a evocative name, Harbor Hearth, evoking the cozy flicker of a wood stove against harbor mists. Emboldened by her growing inner clarity, she shares it vulnerably with Riley over a lingering lunch at a waterfront eatery perched on weathered pilings, where seals bark inquisitively from the rocking buoys below, their sleek heads popping up like curious neighbors, and the air hangs heavy and briny with the promise of low tide, mingled with the grill's smoky char of fresh oysters. Riley's feedback, delivered with her trademark directness over shared platters of fish tacos dripping with lime crema, stings like a slap from the wind-whipped sound. I love the vision. It's got heart, real soul, but the numbers, they're aggressive. Risky in this volatile market with rising rents and supply chain hiccups. Tread careful. Defeat crashes over Doris like a rogue wave, cold and disorienting, soaking her to the core. Future evaporated in an instant. Dream dead on arrival, washed up on the shore of not yet. That night, alone in her apartment with the take-out carton cooling, untouched on the scarred coffee, table its congealing, noodles a sad metaphor for stalled, plans tears trace hot, salty paths down her cheeks, pooling in the hollows of her collarbones as sobs rack her frame. In this raw nadir, she reaches for the book, its pages now dog-eared and comforting as an old quilt. Tenney's story of finding unshakable peace in a monk's sparse cell bare, tatami mats underfoot, a single low table holding a flickering butter lamp. The night's chill, seeping through paper screens, resonates deeply. The happiness wasn't in some external release or cosmic intervention, but in the full, unflinching embrace of the moment's rawness, allowing grief to unfold without the armor of resistance. She tries it deliberately, sinking into the couch's familiar sag that molds to her like a custom cradle, not forcing a veneer of toxic positivity, but permitting the ache to exist in its entirety. Sit still amid the quiet, The only sound's the steady tick of the wall clock, marking seconds like patient footsteps, and the faint, soothing hum of her lavender diffuser exhaling purple mist into the lamplit air, its floral notes weaving a veil of calm. This hurt is here, throbbing like a bruise under tender skin. And so am I whole, witnessing enough. No frantic rush to fix or flee, just compassionate witness, breath sinking with the rise and fall of her chest like ocean tides. Minutes stretch into an eternity of unfolding. The edge of despair softens, blunting like a wave retreating from jagged rocks, leaving polished stones in its wake. The next morning, sunlight slanting through half-drawn blinds and golden bars across the floor, she rises to prepare. Oatmeal at her compact kitchen, table the wooden, spoon clinking softly against. The pot as oats swell in milky warmth, steam carrying hints of cinnamon she'd sprinkled in on impulse. Overbites that crunch with added walnuts. She reframes the rejection not as a tombstone but as vital feedback, a compass needle pointing true north. With renewed resolve, she tweaks the financial projections, cross-referencing market data on her laptop until the numbers align more realistically. Then emails a mentor from her UW alumni network, an older woman named Elena, silver-streaked hair and laugh lines etched from decades of wisdom, who'd helmed a beloved independent bookstore in Gritty, Ballard for over 30 years, its shelves a labyrinth of treasures amid the neighborhood's salt-kissed docks. Elena replies swiftly, her words brisk yet kind. Risky? Darling, every dream worth sipping is. Worth it? Absolutely. Let's unpack over coffee Saturday. Their meet-up unfolds at a quiet, unpretentious cafe in Queen Anne, nestled on a hillside street where Victorian homes gaze down at the city like benevolent guardians, aromas of cardamom pods toasting in a grinder, and dark roast beans, blooming under hot water wrapping around them like an aromatic hug, the steam curling visibly in the cooler air. Over steaming mugs and Alana's handwritten notes on recycled paper, sparks fly ideas for pop-up trials at markets, grant applications for women-owned ventures, even a loyalty app tied to community storytelling nights. Happiness Dora's glimpses in that charged exchange isn't the grand open doors swinging wide ahead. It's the quiet, resilient strength to walk through whatever portals appear, one mindful step illuminating the next. Her steps feel lighter on the light rail ride home that afternoon, the car's gentle rock syncing with the city's vibrant pulse, the flash of muraled walls, the vendor's call of fresh churros, wafting sweetness as if her own heartbeat now harmonizes with the larger rhythm. Deeper still into the book's layered wisdom, Tenney reveals a pivotal truth. Suffering is subjective, born not from the event itself, the sudden layoff notice sliding across, a desk like a guillotine blade, the echoing loneliness of a solitary night with rain lashing the windows, the unfulfilled dream hanging, like a ghost in the attic, but from our instinctive resistance to it, the clenched fists and averted eyes that turn transient pain into prolonged torment. Like the relentless waves crashing on the pebbled shores of Alki Beach at high tide, foam hissing white against driftwood and kelp, pain arrives unbidden and recedes just as inevitably. It's our desperate grip, the no, not this mantra, that transforms it into a riptide dragging us under. By softening into it with the grace of a willow bending in the gale, we learn to surf its crests, emerging not broken but buoyant. Doris encounters this principle viscerally, in the unyielding grip of her body, when illness strikes without mercy, a vicious flu that sidelines her for a full week, confining her to the dim cocoon of her bedroom where feverish nights blur into fevered dreams, sheets tangled and damp with sweat like the twisted roots of a storm-felled cedar, worries amplifying in the heat, works piling up like unchecked emails in my inbox. Hargrove will replace me with someone sharper, younger. The cafe? Forget it, I'll be too drained to even dream. Bedbound and listless, the room a haze of half-unpacked boxes, and the faint, medicinal tang of over-the-counter remedies on her nightstand. She turns to the practice tracker tucked into the book's back pages, a simple, unadorned journal with lined prompts for logging daily sitting still. Moments, its cover soft as well-worn leather. 5 minutes, twice a day no more, to honor the body's fragility. She starts small, lying prone amid the rumpled bedding that smells of eucalyptus from her humidifier's mist, noticing the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest with each labored inhale, lungs expanding like bellows in a forge. The cool, damp cloth draped across her forehead, its folds soothing the throb at her temples like a mother's touch. The distant, grounding rumble of a metro bus grinding gears on Rainier Avenue below, tires hissing over wet asphalt. Thoughts crash in waves. I'm weak, unraveling at the seams. So far behind, the gap widening like a fault line. But Tenney's guidance whispers through the fog like a lifeline tossed into choppy seas. Label it without latching on resistance, fear, story. Let it crest, foam, and recede, water returning to the vast ocean from whence it came. As the fever creaks and breaks after days of this tender vigil, sweat beating anew but cooler now, so does the suffering's tyrannical hold loosen, uncoiling from her limbs like shed snakeskin. She returns to work not as a hollowed-out victim limping back to the fray, but with fresh, unclouded eyes that see opportunities. In the backlog, the chance to streamline a shared drive, perhaps. She delegates a pressing task to Riley with unaccustomed trust, outlining it over a quick call amid the office's familiar buzz of keyboards clacking like Morse code. Riley steps up with effortless grace, her voice crackling through the speaker with enthusiasm. On it, I've got some shortcuts that'll shave hours. Team effort. She adds later, FIS to bumping Doris in the sun-warmed hallway lined with motivational posters curling at the edges, the impact sending a spark up Doris's arm. The ripple spreads subtly but surely. Doris initiates a gratitude thread in the office Slack channel, a digital campfire for subtle shares of small wins. That client called today? Nailed it, thanks to your killer visuals. Riley emojis of thumbs up and coffee cups blooming in replies. Morale lifts like yeast in dough. Conversations lingering longer in the break room over vending machine, vending snacks. Even Hargrove, spotting the uptick in a team huddle, grunts a rare approval over his stained mug. Keep that energy, it's working. Suffering. Doris now intuits with bone-deep certainty. Is subjective indeed. A shapeshifter tamed by openness rather than opposition. It shrinks when met with the wide sky of acceptance, leaving space for growth. Her cafe dream, once fragile as rice paper, gains a new, unshakable layer resilience as the deep, unyielding foundation rooted in the fertile ground of presence. Finally, the book builds to its luminous culmination, inviting your true self in that unchanging core of peace beneath the ever-shifting waves of emotion and circumstance, a still pond at the mountain's heart. Tenney portrays it not as a dramatic, thunderous unveiling with spotlights and fanfare, but as a gentle, intimate homecoming, like slipping into a familiar room after years abroad. The furniture rearranged, but the essence unchanged. This true self acts as the silent witness, ever present and unflappable, waiting patiently for your invitation to step forward. Once welcomed, it transforms even the darkest emotions, rage boiling like a storm kettle, grief heavy as leaden skies into wellsprings of self-compassion, extending that same tender mercy outward like ripples from a dropped pebble. For Doris, this profound invitation weaves through the fabric of a pivotal confrontation, a sudden searing fallout with Taylor that tests the limits of her growth, Months into her devoted practice, with the journal pages filling like a garden in full bloom entries, scrawled in varying inks, chronicling breaths reclaimed, and insights harvested, Doris's clarity sharpens to a fine edge, a lens polishing the blurred edges of her world. Emboldened, she makes the leap, quitting the tech job with a resignation letter typed on her ancient Underwood, dipping into modest savings like drawing from a well, tended over years for a modest pop-up cafe trial at the vibrant Fremont Sunday Farmers Market. The first weekend unfolds as pure alchemy booths alive with the symphony of fresh-baked bread scents, wafting from wood-fired ovens, crusts crackling golden, fiddles tuning in the crisp air with lilting notes that dance over the crowd, customers clustering around her modest setup, raving over lavender lattes frothed to velvety peaks, the floral notes blooming on tongues amid steam that carries hints of honeyed calm. Strangers become brief confidants, sharing bites and stories, under the market's canvas awnings, fluttering like sails. Taylor shows up mid-morning, weaving through the throng with her signature bounce, beaming pride that lights her face brighter than the tentative sun. But later, as the market winds down with vendors, packing crates and the air cooling toward evening, Taylor texts with an edge. Heard you're going all in on the pop-up. Kinda reckless, no? Bills don't pay themselves. Hurt flares in Doris like a struck match. After all my vulnerable sharing over late-night wines, the sketches passed hand to hand. This dismissal? They agree to meet at a weathered park bench overlooking the industrious ship canal, where ducks quack contentedly amid lily pads, their webbed feet paddling lazy circles, and joggers pound the path with steady thuds, earbuds cocooning them from the world. Words tumble out in a torrent, accusations of envy from Doris, sharp as canal-side thorns. Old insecurities surfacing in Taylor, like bubbles in fermenting kombucha fears of being left behind in her own nomadic path. Tears sting hot as Taylor stands abruptly, chair scraping gravel, and strides away, her silhouette shrinking against the fading light. Alone now with the bench's rough, weathered wood biting into her palms like a textured anchor, the breeze off the water lifting stray hairs from her neck with cool fingers, Doris sits in stunned silence, the canal's gentle lap against concrete pilings a metronome to her racing pulse. Book open on her lap, pages riffling slightly in the gust, she recalls the culmination. Invite the true self extend the welcome mat to that inner quietude. She closes her eyes, lashes damp against her cheeks, and feels the bench's grain under her fingertips, each whirl a map of time. The breezes whisper carrying faint diesel from passing barges and the green tang of algae-choked shallows. Beneath the scolding anger, a quieter voice emerges, soft as dawn mist. Pain here, raw and real. For both of us scars from paths diverged, unspoken terrors of solitude. Compassion stirs unbidden, not a forced sentiment, but natural, looming like wildflowers and cracked, pavement after rain warmth extending, first inward, cradling her own trembling heart, then outward toward Taylor's retreating form. She texts from the bench, thumbs steady despite the chill. I lashed out because I'm scared, terrified of this leap, of losing you in the process. Let's talk for real. No armor. They reconvene days later, over slices of tart cherry, pie at a retro diner in Wallingford, the kind with vinyl booths cracked from decades of confidences and neon signs, buzzing open 24/7s. In the fogged window, forks scrape against ceramic plates, filling the booth with the soft symphony of sharing. Vulnerabilities spill forth like the pie's ruby, filling Taylor's knowing fears of fading into blogging obscurity, her posts lost in algorithmic seas. Doris's visceral terror of regret, the "what if I stayed small" echo chamber. Laughter follows the tears, bubbling up unexpectedly like soda fizz, lightening the air. Forgiveness flows as easy and inevitable as the diner's bottomless coffee refills, steaming and black as midnight. The true self Doris senses in that mended moment isn't the high-achieving entrepreneur or the whimsical dreamer chasing sun-dappled whims. It's the vast, holding space that encompasses all of it, the unchanging observer extending kindness inward like a hearth fire and outward like shared warmth on a winter bench. Months later, with the seasons turning like pages in a well-thumbed almanac, springs, tentative greens giving way to summer's bold blooms harbor, hearth thrives as a cherished anchor in the neighborhood, a haven of warm, reclaimed woods polished to a honeyed sheen under pendant lamps that sway gently. Local art adorning the walls and rotating exhibits of seascapes in oils and abstract, sound-inspired abstracts. The constant, inviting hum of pour-overs sizzling through goosenecks, dark streams blooming into cups with notes of stone fruit and earth. Doris isn't flawless in her practice on slow afternoons when the rain drives patrons to cozy corners with newspapers rustling. Thoughts still wander like stray cats, doubts whispering through the steam. What if foot traffic dips, or a harsh review stings? But mindful self-awareness is woven through her life like the deep, unseen roots of Seattle's towering firs in the urban soil, steady, resilient, nourishing every branch and leaf with quiet vitality. Her collaboration with Riley evolved into a dynamic partnership, now brainstorming expansions over virtual, coffees that crackle with shared, screams and excited voice, notes perhaps a mobile cart for tech campus pop-ups. Hargrove, long retired to a cabin on Whidbey Island, where he putters in a garden of heirloom tomatoes, but he sends a handwritten card on opening day, proud of the leader you became, steady as the ferries, bold as the tides. Alex visits weekly, her kids transformed into tiny baristas in training, doodling whimsical menus on butcher paper with crayons that scatter color like confetti lattes with unicorn foam, scones shaped like boats. Taylor co-hosts lively evening events, from poetry slams under string lights to bean-tasting workshops. Their friendship deepened and burnished by the weathering, like copper verdigris adding patina to beauty. Elena mentors from afar, a quiet North Star offering quarterly check-ins over phone lines, humming with encouragement, her voice gravelly with wisdom. Remember, love, it's the pour that matters, not perfection. Doris's life isn't a glossy highlight reel edited for envy, all filters and fast cuts. It's rich, textured with the full spectrum of presence, the resonant clink of ceramic, cups on saucers, the steady patter of rain on the cafe's cedar awnings like applause from the sky, the soft ache of growth met not with recoil, but with grace unfolding petal by petal. Happiness, she knows now with the certainty of tide tables, isn't something chased across horizons with frantic oars. It's claimed, inhabited, one aware breath at a time, the inhale drawing in the world's wild multiplicity, the exhale releasing what no longer serves, like fog lifting to reveal the eternal blue beneath. Friends, as Doris's story settles like the fine mist over the ever-restless sound, veiling the ferries in a soft, silvery hush as they cut through the waters toward unseen shores, I leave you with this gentle nudge into your own depths. What thought are you ready to watch pass by, like a leaf surrendering to the current? What moment in your day the warmth of a mug in chilled hands, the brush of wind on your cheek calls you to simply be, without agenda or armor? Take a breath now, deep and unhurried. Notice the cool rush of air filling your lungs, the subtle expansion of your ribs like wings unfurling. Feel it. The path to that inner hearth has always been yours, etched in every heartbeat, waiting only for your step. Take care, friends, walk softly, listen deeply. Until next time, may your awareness light the way.